There is a specific kind of loss that nobody talks about honestly. Not losing to a better opponent, not losing to circumstances that were against you, not losing because of bad luck or bad timing or forces outside your control. Losing to yourself. The moment when you had everything you needed, the preparation was done, the opportunity was real, and then something happened, something small, a criticism, a rejection, an unexpected obstacle, and in the 30 seconds that followed, the version of you capable of handling it disappeared. What remained was a different version, reactive, contracted, running a script you didn't write and didn't choose. You know this version. You have met it before. It arrives without warning, and it costs you things you cannot always recover. Most people spend years trying to manage this version, to suppress the reactions before they surface, to control the emotions before they take hold, to build systems and habits around a problem they have never named correctly. The problem has a name, an ungoverned inner state. Not a character flaw, not a discipline failure, a specific gap in your training, the gap between what happens to you and what you do with it. The space where the ungoverned mind produces a reaction before you have had a chance to choose a response. In 17th century Japan, a Zen monk named Takuan Soho spent his life teaching the greatest warriors of his era how to close that gap. Not through emotional suppression, not through willpower, through the cultivation of something underneath all of that, a center, stable enough that reactions could not find purchase before the person had chosen how to respond. He called it Joseiko, self-governance, inner sovereignty. 7 encounters with a young samurai named Shin, 7 layers of the same teaching, and 3 practices at the end that you can begin today. Subscribe, and let's begin. Chapter 1. The Problem That Has No Name. Kyoto, 1632. A young samurai named Shin has come to Daitokuji Temple, not to study Zen. He would not have chosen that. He has been sent by his swordmaster Yagyu Munenori with a specific instruction. Go to Takuan. Tell him what is happening to you in combat. Shin is 26 years old. His technical ability is acknowledged by everyone who has trained with him. His sword work is exceptional. In controlled training, he is among the best of his generation. In real encounters, something breaks. Not his courage, not his technique. Something more fundamental, a shift in his inner state at the moment, when the stakes become real, a contraction that happens before he can stop it. And in the space created by that contraction, opportunities close that should have remained open. He tells Takuan this in the simple stone room where the monk receives visitors. Takuan listens without speaking for a long time after Shin finishes. You have named the symptoms, he says finally, but you have not named the illness. Shin waits. You said your technique breaks down, your reactions slow, your judgment becomes unreliable. These are symptoms. They have a single cause. He looks at Shin directly. Your inner state is not governed by you. It is governed by what is happening around you. When what is happening is safe, your state is stable and everything functions. When what is happening is threatening, your state destabilizes and everything fails with it. He pauses. The swordmaster cannot fix this. Technique cannot fix this. More training cannot fix this. Because the problem is not your sword. It is the ground from which you wield it. Teen. He stands. The ground is your inner state, and your inner state has never been trained. Ask Gao. This is the first teaching, and the hardest to sit with. Most people look at where they are losing and attack the thing they can see, the procrastination, the bad habit, the pattern that keeps repeating. They try harder. They build new systems. They change the routine. And sometimes it works, for a while. Then the old thing comes back, because the symptom was never the problem. The problem was underneath. The ungoverned inner state that produces the symptoms over and over, in different circumstances, with different people, in different years of the same life. Shin had been attacking the symptoms for years. Better technique, more training, different preparation before combat. None of it held because none of it touched the actual thing. The actual thing was that his inner state was not his. It belonged to what was happening around him. When things were safe, he was stable. When things were threatening, he destabilized. He was not the one governing, the circumstances were. Takwon put it simply that evening when Shin was leaving. Come back tomorrow. We begin with the ground. Chapter 2. The space that most people never find. The next morning, Takwon gives Shin an instruction. Today you will do nothing except observe the space between what happens and what you do. Shin does not understand. Sit at the gate of the temple. People will pass. Things will happen. Your mind will react. Before you follow any reaction, stop. Find the moment between the thing that happened and the reaction that arose. Stay there. Shin sits at the gate for 4 hours. He notices almost immediately that the space Takwon described is nearly invisible. A sound startles him. The reaction is instantaneous. He is alarmed before he has decided to be alarmed. A monk walks past him without acknowledgement. The reaction is equally immediate. He feels slighted before the thought has formed. Every stimulus produces a reaction, and the reaction precedes any conscious engagement with it. It arrives before he knows it has arrived. He reports this to Takwon that evening. There is no space, Shin says. The reaction is immediate. Takwon shakes his head. The space exists. You simply cannot see it yet, because you have spent 26 years moving through it so fast that you never noticed it was there. He sits. Viktor Frankl, a Western philosopher who suffered more than most men will ever be asked to endure, wrote that between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. He looks at Shin. The samurai knew this space not as philosophy but as practice. The warrior who has found it cannot be provoked, because provocation requires the stimulus to connect directly to the reaction. When the space is inhabited, the connection is interrupted. The stimulus arrives. The person chooses what to do with it. 10. Shin asks how to find the space. You cannot find it by looking for it. You find it by slowing down enough that what was invisible at full speed becomes visible at a slower one. He stands. Tomorrow you will do the same thing, but this time when the reaction arrives, you will name it before you follow it. Not, I am alarmed, but there is alarm arising now. The naming is the space. The space is the naming. This is the second teaching, and it is the one that every major philosophical tradition in history has circled back to. Stoics called it the dichotomy of control. Buddhist philosophy called it the observer mind. Viktor Frankl, who survived 4 concentration camps and documented what he found there, called it the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose your response to anything, regardless of what the anything is. He had lost everything: family, manuscripts, freedom, every external thing a person can lose. But the space between what happened to him and what he did with it, that he never lost. And from that space, he survived. Shin did not know Frankl. He knew the gate. 4 hours at the gate had shown him the same thing in a different form. The space is real. It is small at first, almost too small to stand in, but it is there, and it can be widened. Modern research on this is clear. UCLA neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman found that simply labeling an emotional state in descriptive language, not, I am angry but there is anger, measurably reduces activity in the amygdala. The brain's threat response quiets not from suppression but from observation. The naming shifts, processing from the reactive part of the brain to the part that can choose. The naming is the space. The space is the naming. Shin practiced it for 30 days. By the end of the month, something that had been invisible at full speed became visible at a slower one. Chapter 3. What Fudoshin actually means. Shin has been practicing the observation and naming. He has found the space. He can inhabit it more reliably now. When something startles him, he notices the startle arising before it has taken hold. When something threatens him, he feels the contraction beginning and can choose whether to follow it. He comes to Takwon with a question. I have found the space, but finding it requires effort. It is not natural. I have to work to stay in it. The reactions still come. They are just slower now. Takwon nods. This is the difference between effort and training. Right now you are applying effort each time. Effort is finite. It runs out. What we are building is something underneath the effort. He looks at Shin. You know the word Fudoshin, the immovable mind. What do you think it means? Shin considers, a mind that cannot be moved, emotions that are suppressed, reactions that are controlled. Takwon shakes his head slowly. This is the most common misunderstanding of Fudoshin, and it is the misunderstanding that makes it impossible to achieve. He stands and walks to the window. Suppression is effort applied to a reaction that has already arrived. It consumes energy. It fails under sufficient pressure. A man who suppresses his fear in combat is spending energy on the suppression that should be going to the fight, and when the pressure exceeds the suppression capacity, everything releases at once. He turns back. Fudoshin is not suppression. It is the absence of the condition that produces the reaction that needs suppressing. He sits back down. When a stone is thrown into still water, ripples form and then pass. The water returns to stillness not because it suppressed the ripples, because stillness is its natural state. The ripples pass through it. They did not become it. He looks at Shin. The ungoverned mind becomes the ripples. The minded mind governed by Joseiko is the water. It feels the disturbance. It is moved by it temporarily, and then it returns. This is the third teaching, and the distinction that changes everything about how you approach the inner state. Most people who try to be calmer are trying to suppress. They feel the anger arriving, and they push it down. They feel the fear, and they override it with something that looks like courage. This costs energy, a lot of it, and it fails under enough pressure because suppression is effort applied to something that is still there, still running, still consuming resources from underneath. The man suppressing his fear in combat is fighting two battles, the opponent and himself. Usually the opponent wins not because of superior skill, but because the suppressing man ran out of fuel. Fudoshin is not about the suppression, it is about what is underneath the thing being suppressed. Think of it this way. The stone dropped in still water makes ripples. The ripples are real. They spread. They take time to pass. But the water does not become the ripples. The water returns to stillness, because stillness is what water is, when nothing is disturbing it. Most people become the ripples. The emotion arrives and they are in it, of it, defined by it. The emotion is not something happening to them, it has become them. Joseiko builds the water, not the absence of ripples, the depth beneath them that returns when they have passed. Shin heard this and did not speak for a long time. Then, how long does it take? Takwon smiled. Longer than you want, less than you fear. Takwon Soho spent his life teaching the greatest warriors of his era how to find the space between stimulus and response. If this is changing how you understand your own inner state, like this video, one tap, it tells the algorithm this matters. Now, we continue. Chapter 4. The ordinary moment is the real training. Shin has made real progress. In the controlled environment of the temple, his inner state is noticeably more stable. The space between stimulus and response is wider. The naming practice has become faster. He returns to stillness after disturbance more quickly than before. He tells Takwon he is ready to return to sword training. Takwon asks him one question. When you eat your morning meal, where is your mind? Shin pauses. On the meal. Always? Silence. No. Often it is on the day ahead. On the training. On what happened yesterday. Takwon nods. And when you walk from your room to the training hall? My mind is usually on what the session will require. And when you sleep? Often on what was left undone. Takwon looks at him steadily. You have been practicing Joseiko for 2 months in the special moments. The moments of obvious disruption, the startling sound, the slight from the passing monk, the threatening situation. He pauses. But your ordinary moments are ungoverned. The meal eaten without presence, the walk made without awareness, the sleep entered with the mind still working. He stands. The ordinary moments are where the inner state is built or eroded, not the dramatic ones. The dramatic ones only reveal what the ordinary ones have constructed. He looks at Shin. A man who governs himself only in crisis has not built Joseiko. He has built the performance of Joseiko for moments that feel important. The performance fails in the ordinary moments because the ordinary moments are where the actual ground is formed. He pauses. Go back to the ordinary. Practice there. The sword will wait. This is the fourth teaching. and the one most people resist most strongly. The ungoverned moment at the breakfast table, the ungoverned minute in the queue, the ungoverned hour when the body rests but the mind continues working through everything unresolved, the ungoverned conversation where the body is present and the mind has already moved to the next thing. These moments do not feel like training opportunities because nothing is at stake. No one is watching. No outcome depends on the quality of attention brought to breakfast. But the quality of attention brought to breakfast is the same quality of attention available in every other moment. It is not turned on and off by circumstance. It is a baseline. And the baseline is built in the ordinary moments because ordinary moments are the majority of a life. Research on attention consistently shows that the capacity for sustained presence is not a state that can be switched on at will. It is a trained baseline that reflects the accumulated practice of thousands of ordinary moments. The person who has practiced presence throughout ordinary days does not have to generate it in difficult ones. It is already the ground they are standing on. The person who has been absent throughout ordinary days arrives at the difficult one with nothing underneath them. Shin went back to the ordinary. He ate breakfast with his attention on the meal. He walked with his attention on the walking. He prepared for sleep by placing the day down rather than carrying it into the night. Each time the mind traveled, he noticed. Each time he noticed, he returned. Simply, without drama, without self-criticism, just the return. After 2 weeks of this, something changed that he had not expected. The ordinary moments became richer, not more dramatic, simply more present. The meal had a quality it had not had before. The walk had a texture. The preparation for sleep had a completeness. And when the difficult moments came, they found a mind that had been practicing presence all day, rather than one that had been absent all day, and was now being asked to perform it on demand. Chapter 5. The Test. 3 months in. Takwon tells Shin it is time to return to his swordmaster. Shin returns to Yagyu Munenori's dojo. The first session, Munenori watches him without engaging. Just watches, for an hour. Then he calls Shin forward. "I will tell you what I see," Munenori says. "Then you will tell me if I am correct." Shin nods. 3 months ago, you arrived at the moment of real pressure already half gone. Your state was destabilized by anticipation before the encounter began. By the time the opponent moved, you were fighting your own inner chaos as well as him. He looks at Shin. Today your state is the same before the encounter as during it. You are not preparing yourself for a different condition. You are already in the condition. He pauses. This is what Takwon teaches. Not a technique, a ground. You have found some of the ground. They sparred. Not a competition, an observation. Munenori noting what had changed and what had not. What had changed was the most important thing. When pressure arrived, Shin did not tighten before he had chosen to tighten. He noticed the pressure, he felt it, and he responded from the space he had spent 3 months learning to inhabit. Not perfectly. The old patterns were still present. The contraction still arrived, sometimes before he had caught it. But sometimes he caught it, and in the catching, in the moment between stimulus and reaction where he had learned to live, something different was available. Not the reaction that pressure produced automatically, the response that the present moment actually required. Munenori bowed at the end of the session. Go back to Takwon. Tell him the ground is real but small. You need more time. Shin returned to the temple. Chapter 6. What Joseiko produces in the world. 6 months in. Something has changed in how others relate to Shin. He has noticed it without fully understanding it. People seek him out differently, not because he has done anything visible, because something in the quality of his presence has changed. He is more available, less defended, more genuinely attentive to what is actually in front of him, rather than to the internal management of his own reactions. He asks Takwon about this. The monk is quiet for a moment. When a person is ungoverned internally, they are never fully present with you. Part of them is always managing, monitoring how they appear, defending against possible threat, calculating what you think of them, planning the next thing they will say. He pauses. You have been in the room with someone like this. You can feel it. The conversation has a texture of partial contact. They are there, but not entirely. Something is being withheld. Not from intention, from the simple fact that their attention is divided between you and their own inner management. He looks at Shin. The person with Joseiko is entirely present. They have nothing to manage. Their inner state is not requiring maintenance in the foreground of their attention. So all of their attention is available for what is actually in front of them. He pauses. This is felt by everyone they encounter, not always consciously named, but always felt. People call it presence. They call it charisma. They call it authority. What they are actually feeling is the contact of a person who is fully there, and full contact between two human beings is one of the rarest experiences that exists. This is the sixth teaching, and it describes the practical consequence that transforms how Joseiko is understood. The ungoverned inner state is not only a personal problem, it is a relational one. Every conversation a person has is filtered through the quality of their inner state in that moment. The conversation held while internally reactive produces different contact than the conversation held from stillness. Different words, different listening, different quality of connection. Think about every person who has made you feel genuinely heard, who you walked away from feeling more clear, more settled, more like yourself than before the conversation. What they had was not a communication technique. They were simply fully there. Their attention was not divided between you and their own inner management. It was entirely on you. And think about the opposite. The conversation with someone whose eyes were present, but whose attention was elsewhere. Who was planning the next thing they would say while you were still speaking? Who was evaluating how they were appearing rather than listening to what you were saying? The contact was partial. The conversation was technically happening but not fully real. The difference between these two conversations is not a technique. It is the quality of the inner state the other person brought to the encounter. Joseiko is not an inward practice with inward effects. It is an inward practice with outward ones. The stability of the inner state is felt by everyone who encounters it, not as a performance, as a quality of presence that makes genuine contact possible. The ungoverned person can perform presence, can appear calm, can behave as though they are fully there. But performance is felt as performance. Contact is felt as contact, and the difference is immediately detectable, even by people who could not explain what they were detecting. This is why the samurai tradition placed such emphasis on the inner state, not only for combat, for governance, for negotiation, for leadership. For every encounter where the quality of one person's presence determines the quality of what becomes possible between them and another. The person who governs themselves from the inside carries a quality into every room they enter that changes what the room is capable of producing. Shin understood this on the 6th month, and understood why Takuan had said from the beginning that the ground was everything, not the technique, the ground from which the technique grew. Chapter 7. The Practices Takuan Left Behind. 1 year later, Shin is preparing to leave the temple for the last time. He asks Takuan for one thing before he goes. The practices. The specific ones. The ones I can give to others who come to this same problem. Takuan considers for a long time. The practice is the teaching. You cannot separate them. He pauses. But the teaching that cannot be practiced is not teaching. It is philosophy. So yes, 3 practices. He speaks slowly. Shin listens. The first practice. The witness. Whenever a strong emotion arises, before taking any action, do one thing. Name what is happening in the third person. Not I am angry. There is anger arising now. Not I am afraid. There is fear present. Not I am overwhelmed. There is overwhelm here. The grammatical shift is not cosmetic. It is structural. The moment you name the emotion as something you are observing rather than something you are, the relationship to it changes. You become the witness rather than the emotion, the observer rather than the observed. This is the space Takuan taught Shin to find at the gate of the temple. The naming is the space. In the space is the possibility of response rather than reaction. UCLA neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman has studied this mechanism for over a decade. His research shows that affect labeling, naming an emotional state in descriptive language, measurably reduces amygdala activation. The brain's threat response is quieted not by suppressing the emotion, but by observing it accurately. The naming activates the prefrontal cortex and shifts processing from reactive to reflective. Begin this practice today. The next time an emotion arrives that would normally produce an automatic reaction, stop for 2 seconds. Name it. In the third person, there is anger arising. There is fear here. There is frustration present. Notice what happens after the naming. The second practice, the return. Every time you notice your mind has traveled, in rumination, in anticipation, in the review of what happened or the projection of what will, do one physical thing. Place both hands flat on the nearest surface. Feel the temperature and the texture for 10 seconds. Nothing else. Just the surface under your hands. This is not a meditation technique. It is a neurological anchor. The mind travels in time. It goes to the past to ruminate and to the future to anticipate. The body cannot travel. The body exists only now. When the mind follows the body's sensory experience, it returns to now, not as a concept, as a location. The surface under the hands is always now. 10 seconds of genuine attention to it brings the mind from wherever it was to where the body has remained throughout. Practice this whenever you notice the travel. 10 seconds. Temperature and texture. Then continue from the present. The third practice, the 90-second pause. Before responding to any stimulus that produces a strong reaction, impose a deliberate delay of 90 seconds. Not to plan the response, simply to wait. Neuroscientist Jill Bolte Taylor, who survived and documented a massive stroke with clinical precision, describes that any emotion has a physiological cycle of approximately 90 seconds within the body. The neurochemical cascade that produces the emotional state runs its course and dissipates in 90 seconds when it is not fed by subsequent thought. What extends emotion beyond 90 seconds is not the emotion itself. It is the subsequent thinking about the emotion, the interpretation, the story, the meaning-making that keeps the neurochemical cycle running past its natural duration. When you wait 90 seconds before responding, without feeding the emotion with additional thought, the intensity diminishes. Not the information the emotion carries, the overwhelming quality of it. What remains after 90 seconds is often a clearer signal about what the situation actually requires. Apply this to the moments of strongest reaction, the aggressive message that demands an immediate response, the criticism that produces the impulse to defend, the setback that triggers the urge to catastrophize. Wait 90 seconds, without responding and without thinking about the reaction. Just wait. Then respond from what remains. What this means for you. Shin left the temple after 1 year. He was not transformed in any visible way. He still felt fear, still felt anger, still felt pressure. His emotions had not been removed or suppressed or made smaller. What had changed was the relationship to them. They were weather. He was sky. They arrived. They moved through him. They carried real information about what was happening and what it required, and then they passed. And what remained was the person choosing how to respond, rather than the reaction doing the responding. This is Joseiko. Not the elimination of the emotional life, the cultivation of a center stable enough that the emotional life can be fully felt without being fully followed. 3 practices to begin today. The witness. Name the emotion in the third person when it arrives. There is anger arising. There is fear present. Find the space the naming creates and stay in it for the 2 seconds before you act. The return. When the mind travels to past or future, place both hands on the nearest surface. Feel the temperature and texture for 10 seconds. Return from wherever the mind went to where the body has remained. The 90-second pause. Before responding to strong stimuli, wait 90 seconds without feeding the reaction with additional thought. Respond from what